The mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, he perfectly personifies where the Democrats are today. He's on the side of criminals, illegal immigrant criminals. He opposes the police. He opposes law and order. It got so bad this morning that Joe Scarborough had to chew him out. You're going to love this. Take a look. Here's Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago.
We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We've already tried that, and we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of crime and violence. The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down. We cannot return to the same failed strategies that got us here in the first place. Under the previous presidential administration, we requested more federal resources to address gun violence in our city. We continue to make that same call. We have made significant progress on our own, but there is so much more that we can do if we had real support from the federal government.
All right. Now, we're going to unpack this a little bit, but after this statement, the Morning Joe folks wanted him to come on and sort of defend his city and defend his policies and really, hammer against the Trump administration. I'll show you in a second, but we do have to unpack some of the rhetoric you heard today and blow apart some of the deceptions and lies that you hear repeated all the time as if it's somehow gospel fact, that it's some sort of revealed truth that's been given from on high, right?
We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence.
I'm sorry, says who? This is such a straw man or canard that they threw up. We can't incarcerate ourselves out of violence. All right. Well, first of all, if you incarcerate the people who are committing the violent crimes, then yeah, that's a good step forward, right? But the straw man here is the next thing that you hear him say.
Already tried that. And we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of crime and violence.
See there, that part, without solving the problems of crime and violence. Nobody has said that jailing people when they break the law will solve the problem of crime and violence. That's not the reason you jail people. It's not to solve the problem of crime and violence. It's to, A, punish the person who has perpetrated that crime and that violent crime. Number two, it's to give some level of justice to the victims of that violent crime. And number three is to keep that violent criminal off the streets so he can't victimize more people. Three reasons why you incarcerate people who commit violent crimes. Nowhere in there did anyone say, hey, if we start punishing criminals, that's going to solve the problem of violent crime. So he sets up this straw man, which nobody ever propped up in the first place or maintained. And then he says, see, listen, we've incarcerated people, but that hasn't solved the problem. Well, it's solved some problems. For instance, that person you incarcerated, while he's in jail, he can't harm another innocent person, can he? Problem solved. This is what they do, though. They set up straw mans, and then people who don't really think deeply about this, like anchors of television programs on cable news, they all just nod along and think, oh, that's such a thoughtful, wise statement you've made. We can't incarcerate our way out of this problem. It's bogus.
The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down.
Yeah, I'm going to find out what Brandon Johnson thinks is holy and unholy, and I'm going to set my guiding North Star of faith on that. Unholy? Okay, Padre. But understand what he just said there. Incarcerating criminals is racist. That's racist. If somebody steps up and says, we're going to put criminals behind bars, we're going to punish them, we're going to seek justice for their victims, and we're going to keep them off the streets so they can't commit more heinous crimes, and a person stands up and says, that's racist. Well, there is a racist in the room. And it's the one who thinks it's racist if you want to punish criminals, because that guy thinks that criminals are black. That guy right there. That's racist. So enter Joe Scarborough and his wife, Mika Brzezinski.
I'm curious, would you also like to get federal funding to help put 5,000 more cops on the street in Chicago? Would that help drive down crime?
Well, look, policing by itself is not the full strategy.
No, I understand that. You've talked about the other things you want, and I said those are good and important programs, but I'm asking also, would 5,000 more police officers on the street in Chicago be helpful to go along with all of those social programs that a lot of cities are engaging in and having success with?
Well, look, here's the best way I can put it, Joe, is that in the 90s when I was in high school, we had 3,000 more police officers and we had 900 people being murdered every single year in Chicago. It's just not policing alone. Of course, we want more detectives.
I know it's not policing alone, but I know it's not policing alone. You've told me everything else you want. I'm curious, and this does come down to an ideological difference between people. Do you believe?
I let it go a minute. I was bursting at the seams back here. This is so great because Joe Scarborough is dying for him to just say yes. Dude, you're a prominent Democrat mayor. You're responsible for one of the top 5 largest cities in America, Chicago, and you're a Democrat. Can't you just say yes? More cops would be a good thing to help with the crime thing. And he keeps saying, well, that's not the entirety. And Scarborough's like, I know. I like all those other things. Please just give me this one thing. Please just say yes. I'm trying to help me help you, Mayor Johnson. Help me help you. And I like this move here. Did you see Mika do the wife thing? Watch Mika try to tell Joe to calm his ass down.
More detectives.
I know it's not policing alone, but I know it's not policing alone. You've told me everything else.
I don't think she knew she was on camera. I love that. Joe. And I think she does that at cocktail parties, the two of them. This is amazing that this guy, Joe is trying to help him so much. Joe is like lobbing the softball over the plate for him. I know that you want social workers and community outreach. I know that you want problems to get to the root cause of the crime problem. But would you also like to have federal money for 5,000 more cops? Throw me a bone. And he just can't do it. He just can't.
I'm curious, and this does come down to an ideological difference between people. Do you believe that the streets of Chicago would be safer if there were more uniformed police officers on the streets of Chicago?
I believe the city of Chicago and cities across America would be safer if we actually had, affordable housing. Look,
okay, but that's not the question I asked. My question is, and I just need a yes or a no, do you believe the streets of Chicago would be safer if you got all of those other extraordinary programs put back into place, which do have a history of being successful, if that's complemented by having 5,000 more cops on the streets of Chicago?
I don't believe that we should narrow it down to just police officers, Joe, is what I'm saying. That is an antiquated approach. I'm saying we've invested in detectives.
Mr. Mayor, are you hearing what I'm saying? I'm agreeing with you that all of these other social programs are extraordinarily important. I just need a yes or a no, and then this will be the last time I ask. If you get all of those other social programs that 800 million that New York City does, Los Angeles, other people do with great success, would an additional 5,000 cops on the streets in Chicago help complement those programs to make Chicago safer?
Look, we are working hard to make sure that our police department is fully supported. I don't believe that just simply putting out an arbitrary number around police officers is the answer.
Absolutely extraordinary. The answer is no. You want a yes or no answer? The answer is no. We don't want federal funding for 5,000 more cops. And here's the best part. I bet the police union will still endorse him next time around because they're just Democrats. And they know that only a Democrat will win in that city. It's just extraordinary what you just witnessed here. And you see Joe Scarborough getting hot under the collar and getting frustrated because he's doing his best. He's trying his damnedest to help this guy because that's what he does. It's MS Now, don't you know? And it's all about helping the party. I also want to point out one other moment here that was extraordinary. Here, take a look. I love this moment.
I'm curious, and this does come down to an ideological difference between people.
No. Do you see what happened there? Because we can all finish that sentence when he sort of got stuck. We knew where he was going. We can finish the sentence. Here, help me out, everybody. You can say it live in the chat or in the comment section. This does come down to an ideological divide between blank and blank. This all comes down. The idea that cops, more police officers, would actually help the problem of violent crime in major cities like Chicago. It comes down to an ideological divide between blank and blank. And he was ready to say it, and then something inside him stopped him. Why didn't he say it?
It's not policing alone. You've told me everything else you want. I'm curious, and this does come down to an ideological difference between people.
It's really just an ideological divide between humans. Just random humans, any random people that you might find. It certainly doesn't define the Democrats versus the Republicans. Does it now? Does it? Spoiler, there's your answer. One other part of this, there's more. There's a hell of a lot more. But one other part of this clip that I want to revisit here, when he finally tries to answer this question, again, Joe Scarborough, give me a yes or no.
Police officers on the streets of Chicago.
I believe the city of Chicago and cities across America would be safer if we actually had, affordable housing.
If any Republicans are out there watching, especially ones who run for elected office, and you hear this pablum, you hear this bullshit put out by Gavin Newsom or Karen Bass or Kamala Harris or any of the or this guy, Zohran Mamdani, whatever. Because affordable, that's the new word they're using. They're covering their Marxism and their social. Whenever you ask, Hakeem Jeffries or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, what do you think of this communist in New York? He's like, oh, listen, I may disagree with Zohran Mamdani about some things, but he was really effective in bringing home the issues that are really important, which is affordability. This is their new buzzword. Things aren't affordable. The affordability. And of course, their solution for affordability is the state takes ownership of everything and then hands it out little by little because they're communists, right? So that'll make things affordable. That makes everything affordable. Just look at, I remember in the final days of the Soviet Union, when it was so obvious that it was an economic basket case and people were starving, and said, yes, that may be true, but houses here only cost $500. Long live the proletariat. Things are really affordable in communism. It is. Of course, nobody has any money to buy anything, but they're still affordable. So this guy says, and please, if you're listening, if you're running for elected office, if you're engaged in a debate on your Facebook page with your liberal friends from high school or the liberal brother-in-law this Sunday at dinner, family dinner, always erupts into a political fight because of the liberal brother-in-law. I know who you're talking about. I got one. Please understand what they're saying. The reason we have crime in Chicago, the reason that we have shootings, the reason that we have toddlers who are being murdered in the crossfire of gang warfare in the south side of Chicago is because we don't have affordable housing. It is so insulting. It is so despicably insulting to people who live in poverty that have good morals and good values and would never think of murdering somebody, never think of robbing anywhere. The fact that they are able to divorce themselves from any kind of moral compass or ethical reasoning and say that, well, of course they commit crimes. They don't have affordable housing. And of course, the question, Joe Scarborough should have immediately said, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, if you couldn't afford a house, would you carjack somebody? Would you rape somebody? Would you murder somebody if you couldn't afford a house? Well, no, of course, I would never do that. Well, what makes you so morally superior? This is what you think of the people who live in your city? And the answer is yes. This is what they think of the people who live in their city. One other thing. I love the fact that this guy thinks that if you're wealthy and you can afford your home, clearly you're never going to break the law. Meanwhile, they think that Donald Trump is the greatest criminal mind in history. All right. And then there was more with Joe and the mayor.
And mental and behavioral health care services. It's policing and youth employment. It's a full package. Of course, we want to make sure that our police department is fully supported. That's why I've invested in our detectives bureau, because what we have seen in the city of Chicago, when we solve crime, it acts and serves as a deterrent. It's policing and all of the other efforts that we're doing. Here's the last thing that I'll say to that. The federal government could work stronger to coordinate with my police department to get guns off the streets of Chicago. We've seen these coordination efforts work. Just a couple of weeks ago, the ATF working with my police department, we removed over 150 guns.
All right, spoiler alert. He goes on for another 3 minutes, and he can never bring himself to acknowledge that more police officers would actually help curb violent crime in the city of Chicago. That's the mayor. That's the mayor who made Joe Scarborough's head explode. Joe Scarborough, the friendliest interview this guy's ever going to have on MS Now. Meanwhile, if you actually talk to people who live in Chicago who aren't the mayor, well, they have a different story about what's going on their streets.
Our children can't walk around the community without fear of being hurt or kidnapped or having a drive-by. So it's what these numbers that they're expressing, we don't feel it in our quality of life.
You think? In other words, they're lying and they're manufacturing numbers to make themselves feel good. And so they can have a talking point against Trump. We don't have any crime problem. We don't need Trump here. We don't need the federal government here. We got things under control. This man says his children can't be on the sidewalk because they could get shot or kidnapped. Meanwhile, Joe Scarborough goes to commercial, comes back, and he realizes that by challenging the mayor of Chicago with one simple question, he may have made him look bad. So now he's got to do the party's business here.
Well, you know, Willie, there are a lot of cities, and we talked about this yesterday, that need help. A lot of red state cities. If you look at most crime charts, 7, 8 of the top 10 deadliest cities in America. Big cities are usually in red states. If you look at, Gavin Newsom and the speaker sort of had a back and forth this weekend. Speaker Johnson's home state of Louisiana, 400 times more likely. You're 400 times more likely to be killed in Louisiana than you are in California. Certainly.
Hold on. He just said two very different things, didn't he? He said there are big cities in red states. He didn't say blue. He said there are big cities in red states that have crime problems too. For instance, let's compare Louisiana and California. Well, first of all, the comparison is not Louisiana and California, is it? It's New Orleans and Los Angeles, or New Orleans and Oakland, or no, right? Can we compare apples to apples here? Because you're right. There's murder problems in certain red states. Yeah. Mostly in the blue cities that are like those little islands inside the red states. What about Arkansas? Yeah, well, Little Rock is the capital and it's dominated by Democrats. There's a Democrat mayor. New Orleans, Democrat mayor. Blue mayor after blue mayor after blue. So thank you for proving our point. All right, let's shift back over to CNN, where CNN had to do due diligence to make sure that their viewers were lied to about crime in America. But again, just understand something. In the background of all of this, it's the Democrats who are refusing to acknowledge just basic fundamental truths about law and order and crime.
He was asked about cities in red states because the governor is so essential when it comes to activating National Guard. And the highest crime blue cities are actually in red states, and those are not among the ones on his apparent target list, it appears. Can you talk a little bit about what you heard him asked and what he answered there?
Yeah, I think you did a great fact check there yourself. So there are indeed a bunch of cities in red states that are high on national crime rate lists, however you slice the data. And the president likes to blame the Democratic mayors of those cities. That's his right. But just looking at the facts, cities like Memphis, Tennessee, Cleveland, Ohio, Kansas City, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, Houston, Texas, all among the 10 or 15 cities with the highest violent crime rates, all in red states with Republican governors. So who's to blame for that? I think that's subjective and complicated, but it's just not true that there aren't many cities in red states that are high on those terrible lists.
So it's complicated about who's responsible. No, it's not. Not really. Not really, because in every single one of those cities in a red state, by the way, how did Washington, D.C. get on the list? These are blue cities in red states. Oh, I see. Cities with a population of at least 250,000. Yeah, but this is cherry picking because they haven't picked, Los Angeles or San Francisco or what have you. But there you go. You look at every single one of these cities and they've got a Democrat mayor. Maybe not Tulsa, to look into that one. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. So, yeah, it's really complicated as to who's responsible. Really, last I checked, a city and a city council are directly responsible for the police chiefs, hiring the police, and setting the rules of engagement for the police. I know that because each and every one of the mayors of these cities all marched with Black Lives Matter, took a knee, and said, we're going to defund the police and reimagine policing because of our systemic racism. Also, by the way, George Soros has funded district attorneys in pretty much all of these cities and the counties where these cities lay to have a Soros-funded Democrat soft on crime, no cash bail, we're not going to prosecute any violent criminals kind of district attorney. This has all been part of their strategy. We know that. So as usual, our pals over at CNN, when they do a fact check, don't actually check for facts. Then later in the evening, they had a panel discussion about Trump's takeover of Washington, D.C.
But let's just talk about the logistics for a second. Number one, I don't think it's accurate that in your open, you referred to it as Trump's military occupation. When Governor Hochul here in New York put the National Guard in the subways and in some crime-ridden areas, I don't think we referred to it as military occupation. Why? I ride the subways. I loved when they were there. Law-abiding citizens love that. Are you kidding me? I wish there were more police officers and have one in every single car in the subway at every platform. We can't. That's why Governor Hochul said we're going to put them out and around. Law-abiding citizens, I don't see them objecting or looking to it as like it's a takeover by the military. I'm walking down the street. I walk out of my law firm at 1 o'clock in the morning in Midtown Manhattan, and I see a military guy there. You think I'm upset about that, or am I thrilled about it?
Yeah, well said, except she, as you can saw, was just boiling over. She can't wait to jump in there because you see, more police is not the solution for solving crime. This is the mantra that these Democrats, while they're sitting in their air-conditioned, armed guard secured television studios, have to keep repeating to their viewers until it's believed by people who have to check their brain at the door because it defies logic that having more police doesn't make a city safer. And yeah, she's going to come right in and make sure that everyone knows it.
I think the reason why you may feel that way, Arthur, is because you maneuver in society with a certain privilege. The question is, who are these?
Well, hold on, what privilege? When I get on the subway, just tell me the privilege. When I'm dressed like this on the subway, I am a target. That is not a privilege. I'm a target. There's the guy who probably has a wallet and a watch.
Arthur, I want you to be
That's not
open.
privilege.
I want you to have a little bit of intellectual curiosity and be open and let me finish my point.
I'm very curious.
No, I will let you finish, but do you see this despicable, underhanded, deceptive tactic that they use? That you may think the way you think, but it's because of your privilege. Good for him pushing back. And if you dare push back on the other, what do you mean privilege? When you're riding the subway, everybody's the same in the subway. Okay. We all pay the same fare. We all swipe our card. We're sitting in the subway. There's no privilege. We're all equal targets for violent crime. And then as soon as you make that case, you know what? I just need you to not be so close-minded and just listen to this, okay? Because he's privileged and he's close-minded. And this is the fair discourse that Abby Phillips brings every night. Okay, I'll let you finish. Go ahead, play it out.
Thank you. I think when you ask the question, who is the militarized law enforcement there to protect and who are they there to protect from? And so often in this country, particularly, that is how law enforcement swole their ranks. There was so much violence against people of color, Black people in particular in this country, that they said it's okay to beat a Black person, to murder a Black person, but you gotta be wearing a badge when you do it.
Who are the victims?
Do you want to listen, or you can't talk and listen at the same time?
Well,
so let me just tell you. It doesn't sound like it. My point to you is, I am telling you on the front lines what is happening. And there are militarized police force going and harassing longtime law-abiding citizens of Washington, D.C. And so when we, who are probably a little more familiar with American history, perhaps than you, look at the military turning the police force on its own people, we remember the examples like Tulsa, when law enforcement dropped bombs on its own community. We know what it is like to have people.
We're far from that, though.
We are not so far. We are not so far from that. We are not so. We are actually not so far from that.
What a condescending, patronizing, stuck-up, arrogant, rude little bitch. Sorry. Not really that sorry. So there you go. That's the intelligent and reasoned discourse we get in the mainstream media today, from MSNBC and Joe Scarborough to the panel discussion on CNN. There is one constant through line here, one common denominator, if you will, and that is Democrats are all in, double down, triple down, split the fours against a king. They are completely bought into the idea that the problem with law enforcement is enforcing the law. Good luck with that.